Yeah, why don't we go live? I showed that there should be no delay here, and I'd like to welcome you to the channel called Ham Radio Dude, where over the next, I don't know, 10 episodes, we're going to learn all about Meshtastic together. It's an interesting concept, but I do believe that as we build things up and we continue to show them on the stream, we could learn them together. I think it'll be a pretty unique kind of perspective. And by the end of this whole series, I hope that you make a decision whether or not Meshtastic is right for you. Because as I've dabbled my feet into it for 2 weeks, there are a lot of pros to, theoretically, Meshtastic, and there's also some cons that could be improved on. But with that, I say we're going to learn together because that's just 2 weeks of learning Meshtastic. It's not a lot by any means, but it is a pretty simple process to get started with. And I figure that today we're going to go ahead and we're going to learn by building, and we're going to build our first mesh node out. But let me just show you something if you have about 13 seconds to wait. Okay, 14 seconds. Just ignore that for a moment. This is a box of Meshtastic stuff that was sent to me. And the interesting thing about it is there's many different devices from many different companies. This was sent by a viewer of the channel who wanted, basically to be able to have us show all these different devices, what they're capable of, and what one might be best for you. And with that, I also have several other Meshtastic devices that are on the way, to include the most powerful currently on the market, and also to include some that have been sent to me as a sponsorship, if you will. So if you don't like that, don't watch it. All right, let's take a look here at the camera. So we're going to take a look at those throughout the whole several episodes and really get a feel for, do I want to get involved in Meshtastic? And we're even going to start building some antennas together as well. But first, I have to say good morning to all 25 of you watching. So do me a favor and let me know. I'm sweating. I'm going to have to take this off. Let me know where you're watching from this morning and what the temperature is. This Happy Ham says he's on a bus to Austin for a field trip. Looking forward to seeing what's new. I've been out of the mesh game for months. I don't know if there's anything new, but we're going to find out. And welcome to the channel today, where it's a rainy morning here in northern Illinois, where it's probably about 40 degrees. It's going to be about 50, and I'm going to go take off this button up because I'm sweating since I have a hoodie on under it. Is my audio okay as well? Leave me a 1 if my audio is okay, and I'll get to acknowledge you all here in just a moment. Funny enough, while I was taking off that button up, I found this in the pocket, which it's another Meshtastic device, which is amazing. So we'll put that in the box. And we'll set the box over here because we might need it today. As I'll tell you what happened. I haven't built anything yet, but I do think that building this will be like the most educational thing. But I just picked a bunch of random parts on Amazon.com, which we're going to go through here in just a second. I recognize that the screen is dark. It'll be better on the actual table. And, well, I don't know if I got everything or not. And that's the fun of us building this together, right? It's a unique approach, but by the end of the series, my goal is to have everybody here be somewhat proficient with how mesh works. So good morning, Alpine Radio Waves. Good morning, Happy Ham. Good morning, Katja. Nice to see you in northeastern Wisconsin. KB5UTY, welcome. KB5UTY. Speaking of, was this device you? I can't remember. Was this you? Let me know. And if I got it wrong, my apologies. Let's see here. Good morning. Alpine says in the Vienna area in Austria, it's 41 degrees Fahrenheit. And Michael, good morning. The number 1. 0.5. All right. GP Mesh, thanks for being here. Watson Hertz, thanks for being here. Cooley, thanks for being here. 42 degrees in Greenfield, Indiana. We got Frequency Frontiers with the number 1. Welcome. Ian, welcome. And I'm ready to learn. ITM, thanks so much. Welcome. And good morning, Iceman. Yeah. And Thor, what's going on? I haven't seen you in a while. I'm glad to see you here. Welcome. And hopefully it's 37 degrees there, which is like not too bad for where you're at. But hopefully you enjoy this series. Like I said, it's really nice to see you on here again. And yeah, very good. Yeah, we're going to get to take a look at this. I'll tell the story, though, real quick, since I'm actually waiting for the printer to stop. So it's not like I have to scream the whole time, right? But I met Dave at Hamcation, and I had a Spec 5 Mestastic device that I had just purchased. And Dave saw me kind of like hanging around a couple of the trailers, and he ran up to me and said, hey, do you want to give this one a shot too? And this is a small Mestastic device. I've been carrying it around because it really is convenient to pop into here. And we'll talk about it more in detail later. But also, it's kind of neat because I can kind of just clip it in my vehicle. And I'm not necessarily concerned that this looks like anything anybody wants to take, you know? So it's kind of got two kind of purposes there. And good morning, Iceman 63. Oh, I would love 63. It's supposed to be in the 50s today. Tracy, good to see you as well. I haven't seen you in a while either. So let's get this started here by really just briefly discussing what the process was of me picking parts. Now, if you're unfamiliar, I'd love to just jump into things like I was about to, but maybe a brief description of Mestastic is kind of cool. And basically, there's multiple frequencies that could occur. I'm going to talk for the US, but pretty much, like, for example, I think Europe is 868 megahertz. Here in the US, it's about 906 megahertz, roughly. And it's a frequency that is either licensed or unlicensed, meaning if you're an amateur radio operator, you could use it. If you're not an amateur radio operator, you could use it less power. Okay? And what has happened is all these companies started coming out with Mestastic devices, okay, Laura, and basically allowing you to do things like send encrypted, if you're unlicensed, encrypted text messaging at low power to other units, or unencrypted in your area. These are low power, and I would say relatively generally low distance or short distance communications, although I think the record for the longest contact was around 256 or so kilometers. But anyway, with these multiple devices, and there's a ton of different configurations. You have one with a screen where you could text and a keyboard. You have some that don't even essentially have anything on them except the power button, the GPS unit, and the antenna. And all of these, though, will allow you to communicate because you could utilize a phone app that will allow you to basically view the text messages you've received on, for example, this one, and also text back if you don't have something like a keyboard. So basically what we're talking about is low power, relatively short distance communications that can be encrypted or may not be encrypted. And there's a ton of different devices out there. But as we go through this and we talk about this in several episodes, we'll get to learn more about it. And let me just go ahead and pull up what happens in my general process here. Am I on the right microphone? I was on two microphones. My apologies. It probably sounded like a little bit of echo, I would assume. Well, there's that audio echo issue again with me. Anyway, what happens with me is I can watch some pretty interesting videos and I could kind of get a little bit out of there, and I'll do my best to reference the sources that I found things at. But I kind of just said, okay, I realized that you could buy, there's two ways to get, maybe there's more, but two main ways to get one of these devices. You could buy it pre-built, okay, where they do the work for you and there's a little bit of an upcharge. Or if you're anything like a tinkerer, when you get to build things and see how they function and operate, that's how you get to learn. And so, yeah, I have a bunch of pre-built ones, but let's just build it, I thought. So I went to Amazon. First, I went to Google, and I was like, well, what is the best, inexpensive entry-level Meshtastic device out there? And it told me that the I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. The T Echo Supreme, I believe. The T-Beam Supreme, my apologies. It said that the T-Beam Supreme was regarded as one of the better ones. And if we pull it up, we could take a look at it together. I had just lost my tabs before we started this live stream, and that was because, you guessed it, I was having choppy video too. Give me just a moment. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Basically, this is what I ended up deciding to purchase. Was the LilyGo T-Beam Supreme Meshtastic 915 megahertz ESP32 S3 U-Blocks is a type of GPS M10S GPS TT Go development board. And I know it's a little short or small on the screen, so let me see what I could do about increasing or zooming in or whatever. That's a little bit better, right? Basically, what it comes down to, though, is now it's really hard to navigate. But basically, what it comes down to is there's multiple options to purchase this. And I did a little research and basically came down to kind of guessing. But the one thing I want to point out is there's multiple different versions. So there's a U-Blocks version, which I was told was kind of arguably the better version. I think it's an enhanced or better GPS system, and it's $91 with the word Meshtastic on it. Also, though, there's something that says U-Blocks on there, M10S LilyGo. And what they're referring to when they refer to LilyGo and Meshtastic is a lot of these companies will have these LoRa devices, but they won't already have the Meshtastic firmware on there. So it's kind of on you to build this up and either install the firmware yourself or pay an extra $15, $16 for them to already put the firmware on there, is what I've gathered from this. I would have loved to just buy it with the firmware not installed, just the LilyGo firmware, and then we could build it up together. But the LilyGo one, which is cheaper, wouldn't have been here for, I think it was a couple of weeks. So I went with the Meshtastic firmware. And that kind of makes this a lot easier as us to build and talk about. So this was kind of it. It looks like it comes with basically everything. A GPS unit, the SMA connector. It's an SMA female, meaning your antenna would be an SMA male. And there's a GPS unit already on it. You could see there's a slot on the back for a battery, which is an 18650. So I just guessed at which 18650 I wanted to buy. And we'll see if... I wanted to make a joke, but I have to kind of stop for a second and mention yesterday, my buddy was playing with batteries. So I'm trying not to tell a joke about the batteries since they all caught on fire, but he nearly caught his whole house on fire. So I was going to make a joke about batteries, but I would caution you to just make sure you're and I don't think I did, buy a reputable battery. Know what you're buying, because if it's like a homemade battery or it has really bad reviews, you risk possibly setting your house on fire or worse, right? Welcome, Lee. Thanks for being here. 55 right now. Claude says, and this is the problem that I think we're going to end up talking about quite a bit. I have one, but I am alone in my area, sniff. And being very like low transmit distance, you really do need a lot of, we'll be able to see this later. I'll visually show you later, but you really do need a lot of nodes in your area. Nodes are, you know, each one of these is a node. You need a lot of nodes in your area to be able to have like good, accurate communication. And the way that is kind of like encouraged or that happens is when I send a text message, encrypted or not, to you, I'm talking on the unlicensed side at the moment, but when I send an encrypted text message to you, the viewer at home, I'm talking to you. Maybe we're like too far apart, but there's a node in between us. It should, in theory, utilize that node as like a hop to get to you, right? And there's multiple hops. So there's a redundancy there that like if we can't direct communicate, it's going to send that encrypted message through multiple hops. And even then though, hey Bruce, good morning. Even then though, like if I don't have anybody close enough in my area to relay the message for, it's like I'm just talking to myself at that point. And by the way, I will show you some like really interesting tips and tricks that I found out about having too many clients in one general area at the same time and why that could be a problem. That's a great question, and we'll be able to figure that out along the way too, because as I mentioned, we're all kind of like learning here. Will I be able to use SDR Play to find nodes in my area? And I don't know if there's any application like, so for example, if you're talking about DMR and digital radio with software-defined radios, there's a program called DSD Plus, and that allows you to be able to kind of like listen for P25 and decode unencrypted P25 traffic. And I believe also follow the trunking routine of P25, right? I don't know if there's a program yet like that for like SDRs and Meshtastic, but we'll find out. And if anybody in the chat knows, feel free to ask. What we're going to do though now is we're just going to kind of jump to the back. The printer's done, so it's going to be a little bit easier to talk. We've done our welcomes. Everybody's settled in. Let's take a look now. I will do my best to make sure I'm taking a look back here at the chat screen so I don't miss too much, but also at the same time, making sure that we have a really good stream or an okay-ish stream. Boom. I'm going to bring my microphone down, okay? My hope on there is that while I do this, I can continue to sit. We don't need to talk too much more about that. It's a little choppy, right? It's not too bad, though. So let's just go ahead and open everything up. As I mentioned, we've already seen it on the screen here. We're going to get into more details, I suppose, as we go a little bit further and further. This is the T-Beam Supreme ESP32S3. It's not the cheapest unit on the market. When I do videos, and what we'll do is we'll go day by day with each unit, I will start with the cheapest, least expensive that I have, and then we'll go to the most expensive. And you'll be able to see all the differences at that point. But basically, I got to be careful here. Can you guys see this okay, by the way? I could zoom in a little bit for you. That's better. Okay. I didn't want to just like rip that off in case there was something about it. But basically, we have our antenna. It's advertised as LilyGo 915. We have two sets of jumper pins. I'm not necessarily familiar why we have those yet. We have the LilyGo T-Beam S3 core on here. And then it says right here, 868 megahertz or 915 megahertz, lower 32. And the reason for that is these devices, once we get into the configuration settings on the web interface, or even I think with the phone interface, we'll be able to change those frequencies for our location. For example, if we're in Europe versus if we're in the US. USB-C, also USB-C. And I will assume, I'm going to make an assumption here that I'm not sure yet, but we're going to find out that this would be for like, this one's not going to be used at all for us. I would assume that it would probably be used for flashing this device initially, possibly. And then we have our little screen here. And on the back, we have our spot for our battery, our 18650 battery. Let's see what battery I got, but let me make sure my audio is okay first. Okay, I will assume it sounds like a budget. I think he's talking to me, that this sounds like the budget SM7. Yeah, I changed some audio settings on it too, so I don't know if does it not sound as crisp. For the battery, hold on. Just out of curiosity, how does it sound now? All right, for the battery, we got the 18650s. If you guys don't know, I have a fake or a clone SM7B, or D rather, here at the workbench, and I have a real one at my computer desk. All right, so for the battery, it says it's a 9900 milliamp or a 9.9 amp hour battery. The voltage of the full charge and cutoff discharge is 4.2 volts and 2.75 volts. Don't heat, incinerate, or reverse the polarity. 18650 lithium ion rechargeable batteries. I got to tell you, I absolutely hate and loathe batteries 100%. But there's more. So we do have the stock antenna, which I've already shown you, but I should tell you that what I've been finding for the 2 weeks of an expert I am, because I stayed at a Holiday Inn during that time, that the stock antennas that are like this work okay for short distances. But I figured it would be fun for us to get a 915 megahertz. I think they advertise this one as like 6 dB antenna. Okay, and 900 megahertz is a really, the higher you go up in frequencies, the shorter your antenna can be, right? But we got this one. Again, it's SMA male antenna. Come on. Hold on. There, sorry. SMA male antenna because our port on here is SMA female. And then I posted a link in the description, but an individual named AlleyCat on printables.com, she provides free files for multiple Meshtastic units of cases she's designed. And she not only provides these files for free for you to print, but if you'd like, you could commercially resell them. And I've also linked her YouTube channel below because she does a lot of Meshtastic stuff. Okay, so maybe you go there and see what kind of projects she's working on. But this isn't the full case. This is, I think, pretty much only for the battery. Let's go ahead and I got to run to the printer real quick. Now, also, I do want to mention that she made like this whole really nice document that says everything you need to do to make this work correctly, and I didn't follow it. So these are the buttons. This is the front here. And then these are just like little adapters, like For example, this one says for Baofeng. And I think what happens is a lot of people take their Baofeng radios, right? So you have VHF, UHF voice communications, and they attach their meshtastics to it so that they have, yeah, see, that'll go on the back radio clip, belt clip of the Baofeng. But basically allows you to attach this to a Baofeng, and that way all of a sudden you have voice communications with the Feng, and then you have encrypted, or the potential for encrypted text communications with the Meshtastic device. Now, I was talking earlier about how there's, let's say, amateur radio operators can operate this, and unlicensed people can operate this as well. So one advantage that I found so far of being unlicensed or using this as an unlicensed amateur radio operator is you can have those encrypted communications, but that comes with the sacrifice of the advantage of being a licensed operator is that you could run more power through these devices. So like if you had an external amplifier, for example, as long as you're meeting and not exceeding the limits set forth in Part 97 of the FCC rules and regulations, with your amateur radio license, you could legally increase the power. I'm going to jump over here real quick and just read the comments. Hey, look at this. Oh, I thought my mouse was going to work over here. Wait, it kind of does. No, it doesn't. The first comment I saw was how, and I'm sorry I'm not pronouncing the name right, but some of you already know. AlleyCat does phenomenal work. Her files are outstanding. I 100%, like what I saw this morning, I was like, cool, let's promote this. That's very interesting. Watton Curve said you could just hear a different equalization curve. I actually do have, this isn't related to mesh. We're going back to the microphone thing. I actually do have different equalization settings on both of these microphones for different purposes. But yeah, very nice. Good job hearing that. Really good job hearing that. Let's talk about batteries real quick. Be careful with those batteries. I accidentally put the 18650s in backwards and almost started to fire my car last weekend. Tossed the batteries. At least they're waiting to be disposed of properly. Okay, so real quick. Number one, I'll mention that, yes, reversing the polarity on these is bad, but also, and not everybody's going to know this, so I think it's important. If you peel this label, the battery is exposed, meaning if you set it on metal, there's potential for it to, I hope I'm saying this right, but short out. So I just want you to keep in mind that having the nice casing on the battery, the heat shrink on the battery is just as important. Mike KWMRD taught me this. It's just as important as, properly putting them in the correct way. Now, I will also mention, speaking of Mike, he likes batteries. I was working on a whole series of LifePo 4 batteries, and it got to the point where I ordered the LifePo 4 batteries from the supplier. I had them all set up to how I wanted them to be, and they they sent me 11.1 volt lithium batteries, which are just now sitting in a very safe spot. So anyway, just thought that was funny. But yes, 100%. You got to be careful with these batteries for sure. That's a nice point. Thank you. This I was unaware of because, as I mentioned earlier, there's a very limited amount of communication in my area. But as a licensed operator, it will not communicate with unlicensed modes or unlicensed users. Okay, well, that's really good to know, and that makes a lot of sense, right? Because if we have a licensed operator and they don't, we're not technically allowed to talk to them. So that's really good to know. And during this series, I'll be basically doing everything unlicensed. Oh, thank you. And I don't know, let's just jump into it. So should I do the scariest part first? No, this is the coolest part. Oh, yeah. by the way, by the end of this live stream, I'm going to show you guys something that I have been working on. And by the end of this series, hopefully we'll have it build up to the point where we can all build it together. So I just mentioned about being careful not to remove the heat shrink tubing or the heat shrink on here. So I'm going to get a knife and I'm going to cut this recklessly. So no, I'm just kidding. Hold on. I used a soldering iron. Dang it. Let's just leave that one over there. And this is the 18650 battery. And this here says negative. This here says positive. So maybe you guys will get to see it live, right? I 100% hate batteries. And I'll tell you right now, I already got the wrong battery, I think. Yeah. And the reason I say I got the wrong battery, I think I could rectify this, by the way, so no worries. But you see I have the stub on here. The stub is interfering with the ability for this to go in. So if you don't know, 18650 batteries can come one of two ways. With a stub, let's call it a nipple. With the nipple or without a nipple. Please stand by while I go try to rectify this. I don't have my glasses on, but I think I just read something funny. Antenna first. Great point. Yeah, otherwise we like to live dangerously. And the purpose and the reasoning behind antenna first is, well, if you don't do antenna first, thank you. If you don't do antenna first and you put the battery in and this powers up, okay, what's going to happen is, theoretically, although I don't think on the first boot it would, theoretically, it could transmit power and then fry out your Mestastic, right? Because whenever it transmits without an antenna, your standing wave ratio, you have very high impedance. Sorry, I just had to take a deep breath. And with that high impedance and that high standing wave ratio, rather, the reflective power can really damage these units. So that's a great point, which I guess maybe that just means we're going to put this in here. And the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to put our buttons on. By the way, I did find a battery. And this is also an 18650B. And the reason I had bought these batteries, just so we're all aware, is because a lot of people recommend that you have a high capacity for these small units so they could last a longer amount of time. I'm going to set that battery carefully over there. And this one carefully over here. And I guess we're going to go into the case building. So these buttons are also printed. One problem we might experience today is, remember I said I didn't read the README file. And I guess that would be important because after I had already started printing, it had mentioned that like there's certain file settings that you might want to do with ABS and certain ones you might want to do with, PETG, MPLA. These are different types of filaments which have different types of shrinkage rates. Why do I have 4 buttons? So I just put those buttons in there. Theoretically, there's nothing on the front here that I'm going to need to do. So as I place this in here, I do recall her saying something about maybe the GPS unit maybe being needed to be adjusted. But one of the things I'm going to notice here, like I said, I'm not reading the instructions, is maybe this SMA nut needs to come up a little bit so it could slide in here, and then the SMA nut screws on. Big brains. Something I don't normally do is I'm being very careful because I don't want to damage anything. Now, I could do this a couple of ways. I could easily just put it on like this, screw it on just a little bit here. What I think is going to end up happening is when we put this on, it looks like it might actually fit okay. And if it's not successful at that point, I will read the instructions, which I probably should have done initially anyway. Let's be real. But following the guideline, I can't actually put the antenna on, right? I can't put the antenna on before putting the battery in. Pretty cool case though, isn't it? The buttons seem to work okay, and that's like a power button, I think, or reset button. What we'll do is this for now. That's a good idea. Print yourself several small SMA wrenches. Okay. Oh, look at that. Did you see that right there? Remember we were talking about how if it peels away, it's technically part of the battery and could short out. Positive, positive, negative, negative. Electrical tape for now. For the stream. Because maybe we want to see a fire. Hey, that's a great point there, James. Most likely this is a fake because I'm just going to read what you said. I'll try to get the comment up on the screen here real quick. I really appreciate this comment, and we'll talk about this real quick. I enjoy this type of stuff. This 18650 is most likely a fake. Maximum realistic capacity is more like 3.5 amp hours or 3,500 milliamp hours. For 18650s, don't believe the fake ads. And I got it on Amazon, so you know it's 100%. I'm just kidding. However, James, you bring up a great point, and I could test this. I will off camera today or tonight make a video utilizing my West Mountain Radio computer-based Analyzer 5, which has proven to me to be a very reliable device in testing the overall quality of a battery. Quality meaning when you watch, for example, a LiFePO 4 deplete is not spiking and lowering in voltage values, but it's remaining consistent in their values, as well as relaying to me whether or not the advertised amp hours is accurate. So I will do this on camera, off live stream tonight, and I'll post the results in a quick video short. Thank you. I bet you're right. And if you believe he's right, hit a 1 in the chat. And we'll pretend that we got some electrical tape over here. Positive, negative, negative, positive, 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 negative, negative. Okay, it doesn't turn on, which is a good thing. Since it's not turning on, we are going to quickly guess that wasn't super quick now, was it? Oh, no, 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 no. Boom. So now it says Meshtastic D760, Meshtastic Android, iOS, web, or CLI command line interface clients. But before I go too far into any of that, we're doing this all on a whim here. This case actually just locks into place. I used ASA filament. Actually, maybe right here, it requires some nuts and bolts. And don't worry, I did read that part of the README guide, and I got nuts and bolts. These are M3 80 millimeter and M3 bolts. The hardware doesn't look pretty because it was the hardware store. And real quick, I am going to take a break so I can get some water. We'll go back to the main screen here for just a second. You could ask your questions and let me know, is this pace way too slow for you or is this okay? Oh, shoot. Sorry. I come from the dark. If this pace is too slow, let me know. But like, I really just step by step, we're just kind of seeing it how it goes. Not fake, but the 9,900 milliamp hour is a pants on fire lie. If you all don't know who I am, I don't either. But what I do know is April 1st, 2022, I believe, there was this guy who posted a YouTube video about the Baofeng radio that advertised, was it 100 or 1,000 milliamp? It was 100. It was 1,100 watts, and regardless, the point is they were outrageous claims. It was hilarious. Sorry about that, Sean, the technician, or technician. Yeah, we'll go back to it here in just a moment there. Can't wait to get my new printer. Not doing ASA, but polycarbonate carbon fiber is going to be nice. It's very strong stuff. It's great. So I just needed to take a break here real quick to clear my mind, but also drink a little bit of water. And then we're going to go into putting those nuts and bolts on, which will hold the cases together. One of the things I want to point out is I talk about printing with different filament materials like PLA and PETG or PETG, and then ASA. And the reason it's important to follow the instructions like I did not was because they all have different amounts of how much they're going to shrink as it gets cooler. It was cold. If you guys know the reference to that, let me know in the comments. And let me switch over here. By the way, if you could all recommend me a battery, an 18650 battery that you think would be good for these Meshtastic devices, I'm all ears because we're learning together. Okay. Back to what I was saying before putting the nuts and the bolts on. Miss AlleyCat also made some really interesting things here. Like, for example, I'm not quite sure yet how this goes on. We'll figure this out in a minute. But basically, through the clip system, I believe, you should be able to, yeah, right on the outside here and here, like that. And you should be able then to be able to screw on something like a tripod. So this can sit on a tripod. And then this antenna, I want to tell you about 900 megahertz antennas. And it's with any antenna, but it's really important in 900 megahertz. I've been reading a lot of things about congestion on 900 megahertz. I don't have that problem in this area. However, if there's not necessarily congestion, but maybe interference, you see a station, but you have a very low signal to noise ratio to them, and you're vertical. If you both have the option to change to a horizontal polarization, this is applying to any antennas, right? If you both can kind of switch to a horizontal polarization, you might get a better signal quality between the two stations because, you guessed it, you've changed the orientation and therefore possibly bypassed some of the structures, or things rather, that were causing the signal to noise ratio issue, a quieter polarization. But anyway, yeah, there's this little spot here for a tripod. Boom, kind of cool. And then that also explains how this would go on for the Baofeng. You know, screw this to the back of the Baofeng radio. That's really unique. Great job. Screw this to the back of the Baofeng radio and then clip it onto here. Tactical, that's for sure. Okay, so let's get our nuts and bolts on. I'm going to read the instructions for this one because, like, two things are happening in my brain right now. Number one, my brain is saying, well, these nuts are going to go right here, but that's not necessarily accurate. The nuts are going to go on the inside, and then just the posts are going to go here, I think. I need to shut this off. Hold on a second. I want to make sure I got all the camera stuff right. Yes, the antenna was seated all the way in, from what I could tell. Yeah. Very, very awesome and unique concept here for the design of the case and the functionality, because first of all, I don't think these are 80 millimeter M3 studs, so we might skip this step, although I bought them at a place in a box where it said they were 80 millimeters. But the unique thing that I want to talk about is how these slots right here allow for you to input the M3 nuts. So along the way too, as I'm putting these in, one of the questions that had been asked to me recently was, Well, how do I get started and know if there's going to be anybody in my area? And I guess that's one thing I'll probably kind of just mention here briefly is, well, the problem is because you can have encrypted and unencrypted communications, right? You might get a good understanding of what's in your area, but it doesn't mean anybody is talking. And even then, without a Meshtastic device, if you can't use an SDR play, which we're going to find out here soon, you will never know. That's why they tell you to check your tolerances. You will never know whether or not who's in your area until you buy one, unless, again, there's a way with an SDR. And so it's kind of like shooting in the dark. You could invest as little as $30 to find out if there's anybody in your area or not. And again, though, like if there's people who are on encrypted networks, they might not be talking on the unencrypted. So even if you see people, you might have a difficult time talking if you don't know how to get to their channel and have their encryption key and so forth. There would be a very good use case for this for like a family who might be at the mall or a sporting event, and maybe everybody has one of these and they're on their own encrypted channel. And it's like, well, if I lose you guys, I could just ring you, meaning I could send a text message from one of these devices to your son or your daughter's Meshtastic device, and it starts beeping. So maybe I hear that beep, or maybe they hear it and they know to meet up at a certain point. Again, the nut goes down and over, but I'm going to have to try to adapt to this. So I'm going to go back to my desk for just a second. Or perhaps why you always buy multiple nuts at the hardware store is because they never get put back in the right darn spot. That's not the right size. And if somebody already suggested that in the chat, I need to pay a little bit more attention to the chat. So now I'm just going to push these down, make sure that they're in okay. But that actually is a good point there. Iceman has a really good point. This one's not going to fit correctly into here because it's a lot wider of a base. So what I would probably end up doing at that point is taking LECat's design and extending out this hole a little bit. Shouldn't be that difficult. Anyway, let's see if this works, hopefully. This episode is sponsored by nobody. I bought this iFixit kit. I really enjoy it. I had one for several years. Eventually, I lost all the bits because I just placed them in random spots like you just saw me do. So I bought another one, and I'm trying to be a little bit more mindful of it. Anyway, now that those nuts are in, I feel like I could have went with a longer screw. But that one was good. Did you see that? So there it is. There it is. Boom. Perfect. Nice. We're good to go. Let's go home. Now, USB-C charging on the bottom, but you also see a port for a 32 gigabyte micro SD card. Let's take a look at the website. I don't know if this SD card is going to be okay. And I say that because there are recommendations that certain SD cards, micro SD cards, don't work well with this Meshtastic device, the Supreme. But look at that. I mean, I was taking my time, and if you read the directions, we still got to get everything configured, and we could maybe even do that on a later date. I don't know how far I want to take this today. You all let me know. I don't want to tire you out. I don't want to bore you, but I also want to point out something amazing. Oh my, this is such a cool case. Wow. And I'm sorry I forget at the moment, but whoever did say such great cases was correct. Let me go grab something. If you all don't know, it's right here. If you all don't know, I have my own end-fed half-wave kits. And one of the cool things I do on those kits is I have these cinch Velcro elastic straps, 2 straps, 8 inches by 1 inch. We're gonna let's see here. Dun, 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 dun. There you go. Okay, so it's on backwards. Sue me. Look at that. Now you could like put it on a tailpipe. Don't break the law. Let's go back to the table for just a moment. It looks really good. I think it looks great. It's, Molly compatible as well. Absolutely, it's Molly compatible. This was tactical, man. Bust out the reamer. I don't know what that means. Let's see. If a vape store battery explodes, it would be bad PR. And then Sean does go on to say, AlleyCat makes great designs that are really well designed. Chris says, I would never have thought of getting them at vape stores. Oh, somebody must have suggested, hey, get a 18650 at a vape store. That's true. And does the antenna slide through the green case while it's still attached to the radio? No. No, it does not. Hold on. 1 second. Oh, yeah, theoretically, I guess, yes, it does. Here, I'll show you. Make sure this is off real quick. It's off. Yeah, theoretically, yep, it would. So we learned something. Actually, that makes it a lot better of a design than some of them that I've seen. And we're going to take a look at those in the future, too. Some of the ones that would have been bought, already built, have some design flaws, which this one seems to actually eliminate in that aspect. But yes, to answer your question, again, this is off. To answer your question, the nut that's on here, the nut that is on here, not only the nut, but the circumference, I think I used that right, or of the antenna would slide through here. So that would have been the correct way for me to do it. Would have been to slide it through, lock it into place, and then bolt it down. And I would have probably have gotten black M3 studs if they had them. Oh, sorry if that audio is weird on that one. Few other nodes in the higher populated areas around me. And there's the issue is like from here to the major city, I could see the nodes because I think what happens is occasionally I see somebody who's on a big tower, but I just don't have enough power to be able to transmit to that individual. Because remember, when you're receiving, you might receive better than you can send, I think is my issue. And so I could see a lot of stations via those hops that we talked about earlier. But we're going to plug this in here, I think, in a moment. It's 9:16. We've been on it for about an hour. But basically, I can't transmit again. Hello? I was told, did we lose audio? Hello? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I show that there's audio. Are we going through this again? Okay. Yagi for Meshtastic pointed at the city. That would be a little bit far. However, a Yagi to the other stations would be perfect. And don't worry, we have plans to build a whole tactical Yagi that will fit in a briefcase and extend out to be, I don't know, 10 or 13 elements. So yeah, definitely. There's just such a delay in the stream that what happened was earlier, I didn't switch my microphones when I was showing you whatever on the table. And I think that's what all the I can't hear yous were coming from. But now I'm on the desk. Everything's okay again. So, hold on. Doo. I forgot what I was going to do. Hello in the dark again. Hi, I'm in the dark again. I take my big ring light that's usually back here and I put it over the desk when I'm doing things, right? So you can get that nice little photo instead of this. Yeah, well, we're debating whether to program it today or not. That was what I had asked next. Like I said, this is a very slow integrated series. By the time we're done, everybody should become familiar with everything. I don't have a problem programming it today. We could do that, or we could wait for another series. I have to take into consideration, people watching in the future, are they going to want to watch a 3-hour stream to learn about this stuff? I'll get to all that. I'll get to this too in just a few moments as well. I've already learned about this step by step. I have a plan, but do you guys want me to continue on today, or do you want to just leave it here as we build the device now and we already know it functions? That's all it takes. It's that simple. We can go ahead and start configuring. I'll just bring it over to the computer. I'll shut off that camera, use that USB input, and you won't be able to see what's on the actual device, but you don't need to, because then we'll have the computer to do it. Y'all let me know. But basically what I was hoping to show you today was, yeah, good stopping point. Okay, part 2, programming. Yeah, I think that's good. And then like part 3, yeah, let's discuss this real quick. I'm going to bring my light over here. I can't stand it myself. Give me 2 seconds. Please hold. I got you that time. I got you that time. Now the comments are going to come in. There's no audio. I got you. No, I just had no idea. All I was, you know what? I'm going to hire somebody to do this. Chuck Dog doesn't work. He just barks commands at me. Let me regain my composure. I think that's a good point. Part 2, we're going to program everything, because we could go over at that time choosing the correct settings, as well as setting up our unencrypted channel, and we'll even use the Chicagoland mesh to set up our encrypted channel. And we'll get an idea and a feel for how both of those work, and that problem you might run into, which was mentioned in the live stream just a moment ago by localhost, which was make sure you don't have 1,000 other units turned on while you're doing this. I want to show that to you because it's a huge problem you might have, and you're thinking people are receiving my messages, but it's just your other nodes that are. So where I'm going with this, though, is we're going to start the next episode getting to program everything. Okay. In the meantime, I think it was really cool that you were able to see that it doesn't take much to build your own if you want to. And if you don't have a 3D printer, I could recommend these things. You can go to a local library, and at the local library, you could bring files for them to print. They'll print those files for you for a very minimal cost. I think it's the cost of filament. That's a service that a lot of libraries provide. But also you can go onto Etsy, and if you go to AlleyCat's printables page, you find the unit that you've decided to buy once we get to that point. She actually does this really cool thing, and in her PDF file, it says, I don't sell these, but here is a list of sellers on Etsy who do. And so you can click on that list, and I think she recommends or a few of the people who have really good reviews. So all we did today was we bought a battery, found out that battery wasn't going to work. I'll get another battery. The SD card. I want to check that still. So before we go, let's check the SD card. Bought the T-Beam Supreme, the Taco Bell Supreme. We got the Taco Bell Supreme, and that's really all we needed. I found out that external antenna won't quite work yet, but we'll get there too. And I appreciate it. Check this out. So, Dave, would you kind of just explain like what role is role a good word? Was role a good word? Dave has a little bit of an in within the Meshtastic community, and maybe that's a go too. Like if you want to jump on or just from the chat, give some input. That's great, and then maybe we can get Robert on as well. Robert, the digital rancher. I saw him again at the fest, and he was walking around with some Meshtastic too. I highly encourage you not to buy anything if this is your first time until the series is over, because by the end of the series and the way that I'm going, I do feel confident that most of you will understand pretty much how all these devices work, as well as me, right? This is how we learn. So with that, let's really just check that compatibility list for the SD cards before I forget for a fourth time. Welcome to ADHD, my friend. Wait, that's not... Okay, I'll get back to your comment in a moment. I'm going to buy all the things. And let me explain this to you. So I'm not saying names because, if they don't want to be known, I don't want to ruin that. But basically, I got home to a big box of Meshtastic stuff on Saturday. And it was all stuff that this gentleman sent to me. On top of that, I was already buying my own mesh stuff, and then Dave gave me that small Meshtastic device I showed earlier. And on top of that, I bought a G2 Meshtastic device, which has more power. And we're going to get to see these all. But then I went on this antenna craze where I started building antennas with my buddy Abe. And then I ordered a 10 dB gain antenna and multiple other ones. So I keep buying all the things, and I think that it actually is going to make for some cool content. I'm choosing to do it as a live stream, at least for now. I think when we get to the radios and we're individually showing them off, it can go either way. So I'd love to hear some comments about that. IC333, welcome. F in the chat. F in the chat. Oh, and then Dave said, I am the Seed Studio. Seed Studio representative for ham radio and Meshtastic. I have a really good idea that I think would really become beneficial to the Meshtastic community. And I haven't been able to find anything like this yet. So if I could please elaborate to the public, and if it exists, let me know. But if it doesn't exist and you have connections to Seed Studio, roll with it. When I worked 20 years ago now at the internet companies, I was in wireless internet, and we used wireless links that were both licensed MMDS and unlicensed 900 megahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, and like 5.4 or 7 gigahertz. That was a long time ago. But one of the things we would do is, let's say we had a client unit, okay? And the client unit would be on the house, okay? And we had that's called the subscriber unit. And then we had the actual tower unit, 150, 250 feet in the air, which is basically an antenna, right? That needs to be powered because it has things in it. And the problem that you have when you're at 200 feet, I could actually probably show this to you on a tower with Meshtastic, okay? Because I have the access to a 100-foot, what's actually a 283 or so foot tower. And at 100 feet and 105 feet, I think it is, are two 900 megahertz antennas. Why I mention all this is in something you need to consider. When it comes to 900 megahertz and it comes to standard coax, the loss is very, very great. Meaning, if I was to use RG8X with that minimal amount of power that I'm putting out on the top, I'm getting to the point, by the way, I promise. With the amount of power that I'm putting out, the loss in that coax is just so great. I'm really not going to be putting hardly any, if any, power out. So because I got it so high, it's great. And this is where, you know, you really have to take into consideration the coax type. Now you start to use something like a 50A HeliX cable, right? 3/8" thick, right? Or very thick cable, not 3/8", that's kind of small, but thick HeliX 50A cable. And you're going to have at 100 feet, probably something like 1.5 to 1.9 dB of loss, which is greatly reduced from something like RG8X, which would be essentially you're not even able to transmit. So you have to take those things into consideration. And one of the suggestions that I received is, well, we just suggest putting our unit all the way, you know, up high. That's great. And if that works for you all, cool. But if I hire a guy, for example, to climb 100 feet to put this on a tower, and then I find out that there's a critical firmware update, I now have to go hire a guy to go up the tower to bring it down so I could do the firmware update to bring it back up as far as I could see so far. And that comes to the thought of a commercially available power over Ethernet Meshtastic device that could be put on something like a tower or up very high, and it's ran power over Ethernet, so your antenna could still stay sustained up high, and you never have to worry about going up to get it down, because theoretically somewhere, somehow, that power over Ethernet, which would power the device without having to worry about the battery fully depleting, could also possibly... You see, I hope this makes sense where I'm going, but hopefully also allow you to be able to program or update the firmware on it via that power over Ethernet or that cable run. Oh, perfect. I took 10 minutes to explain something that's already available. Generally, most folks will install a solar powered node on the tower. The rub is updating firmware. Yeah, Meshtastic is working on over-the-air firmware updates. Well, that's another great solution. Power over Ethernet is currently possible with several devices. If I could get some of those devices, a list of them, or just like even one or two names of them, I'll buy one. And over-the-air can cause problems, but most of the time it's probably fine. So now that's a great consideration to take into point, though, because I'm not climbing, or rather, I'm not climbing any tower, but I'm not having anybody climb a tower multiple times to update the firmware. So I think that's really cool. And then localhost said he's going to link me to a power over Ethernet based device. So perfect. With that, I know that I said the micro SD card, but we've already taken about 1 hour and 14 minutes, 1 hour and 15 minutes. Let's say our goodbyes. Unless you have any questions. This is a Midwest goodbye, so it's a 20-minute goodbye. So if you have any questions, let me know now. Otherwise, we're going to keep on learning in this series, and I think it'll be fun. It's a nice Ooh, that's actually a good idea. A string pulley to raise and lower the antennas as needed. We're going to add a whole nother series. Hey, you be good. We're going to add a whole nother series or set of episodes into this too, where we operate Meshtastic in weird places. Like, you know, we're going to get to see real world distance results, I think, as well, because we're talking about antennas, we're talking about building, we're talking about pre-built units, and we're talking about building your own units. We're also going to finish this off by going outdoors and trying to make long distance contacts. Number one at the chat, if you want me to, if I can, live stream from the top of the Willis or Sears Tower in Chicago, Illinois, and see how far out we can get. Let me know. And otherwise, we're going to say 73 to you all with our goodbye round. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your support. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't, thanks for trying. 73 to you, Dave. 73 to you, GP. Mech. 73, Ham Without a Plan. Unrealistic, Fed with Hardline. 90 Element Yagi, 38-foot boom, 21 dB again. The most unrealistic setup ever. Yeah, so it seems like a couple of you guys do want to see maybe operating from the Sears Tower. Dave wants to see it. Thor wants to see it. And the distance on that probably could be remarkable. We did it from the Tower of Americas in San Antonio. Oh, I love San Antonio. I use a Tim Wells blowgun to get it up the tree. Awesome. 73 to UKC5 TGT radios and more. 73 local host, Bearded Believer. 73 Dave. 73 Akaja. Katja. I hope. 73 Iceman. Thank you for the praises of the live stream. And IC33373. WUZ. You might be interested in this stuff too after the end of this series. And I hope to see you at the next big fest. K0TJT. Thor, nice to see you again. Thank you for being here and sharing this morning with us. Sean, thanks for being here. And Kelly, thank you for being here. 73 to you. And I think that's everybody. Hey, this was a fun time. And thank you for your patience with my nice, slow, methodical approach to things. But I really am trying to have a slower, methodical approach to things. But also, it was all foreign to me, so it was really cool. Bye, everybody. Oh, wait. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. This is a proper Midwest goodbye, but I also need to know, am I supposed to, I could do what I want. It's my channel as we're learning here on this channel. But I would like to stream as close to daily as possible until this series is completed. And so with that, is a daily thing too hard for me to, is it too hard for me to do? You don't know. You're not me. Is a daily thing too hard for everybody to commit to? Should I do it like 3 times a week? Should I do it twice a week? Would it be like maybe a live stream during the week and then a live stream on Saturdays? If I can get your input here real quick before you go, I would love to hear. I got to go like stretch my neck real quick or something. Please hold. I promise I'll unmute it this time. I unmuted it. Unmuted this time. About 3 days a week. So like the way it works for me with my functionality and my duties or my requirements off of camera. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays would typically be good for me, or Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, if it was still in the morning. But 2 to 3 a week would be good. Okay, I'll shoot for about 2 to 3 a week then. I think that's like what I'm seeing. 3 days on here, 2 to 3 days. Whatever works for you, my man. My schedule is too sketchy to plan around me. Yeah, definitely. I can't plan around everybody. We know that, but it's always good to get input and understand like where I need to be. And GP Mech is looking or picking up signals on the 915 SDR play. Okay, so next episode, configuring everything. And I think that will be an hour long as well if we do it correctly. So we're just going to say next episode, configuring. See you then. Ba-dum-bum.